Hey guys, subscribe for daily knife content. And if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Kansept Main Street. This is the full-size version of the little Main Street that I reviewed a while back. I'm really happy that this exists. I said in the review, I was like, this would be great if it was bigger. And now looking at it, it's like, well, of course they did a bigger version. Like, it's not like they didn't think of that. So that's really cool. This knife will be linked right down below in the description. There are a bunch of different versions of this. You don't have to go with what is carbon fiber here. They actually have some choices of micarta and either the satin finish, or I'm sorry, the tumbled blade, or I think it's like a dark black washed blade. Really cool. Check out those links. I'll also link Kansept knives in general right down below. Thanks so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. You can find a link for my Patreon right down in the description. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Thank you so much to Kansept Knives for sending this in for review. Got those two things mixed up there. Overall length of the Main Street coming in at 8 inches. Blade length coming in just shy of 3.5, about 3.4. Cutting edge also coming in at about 3.4 inches. So a wonderful, wonderful size, at least for me. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat 1 and Rat 2? You can see that this isn't quite as long as the Rat 1, but it's still definitely a large knife, or full-size knife as I would define it. How about up against the Spyderco Pm2 and Para 3? Again, kind of right in between, but a good... I don't want to call this a medium-sized knife. It's 8 inches is a full-size knife by, my definition. Last but not least, up against the Benchmade Griptilian or Ritter Hogue and the Mini Griptilian. You can see it is identical in overall length to the Ritter Hogue. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here that this is not a thick knife. It's about the same thickness as the Spyderco Para 3. Length and height up against the Spyderco Pm2 and Para 3. You can see here that we're a little bit shorter than the Pm2 in length and a little bit longer than the Para 3. It's not super tall, even considering this ramp right here, right? Height, we're still looking at a more height in the Spyderco Para 3. So it's a full-size knife, but I don't think it's going to be considered cumbersome by everybody. We'll go ahead and measure blade stock thickness here. Blade stock thickness on this guy, I'm going to guess it's 125 thousandths. Yeah, right on the money, 125 thousandths. He probably checked that before the video. No, but even if I did, do you really care? Oh, how intelligent is Metal Complex? He's able to guess blade stock thickness, right? Yeah, nobody cares. Inside of this knife, whoops. Oh, that was terrible. Sorry about that. We're going to talk about action here in a second. Don't judge me there. Inside here, you can see that there are countersunk steel liners that are milled out, and that's great. I love that because then you get that feeling of, that extra feeling of rigidity while not adding a lot of weight, right? I just really like that. The liner lock itself is also countersunk into these carbon fiber scales, and so that makes me happy. Let's go ahead and do... Oh, we should probably weigh it after I do that, right? Weight on the Kansept Main Street coming in a totally reasonable 4 ounces in my opinion, right? If you're kind of, big into ratios, it doesn't meet that mark. 4 ounces is not what I consider to be heavy, right? It depends on what you like to carry. If you like to carry a full-size knife and this is right around your weight preferences, which it's right there in my preference range, then you're probably not going to have a problem with it. It just depends on what you like to carry and what you're wearing. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check on this guy. Get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the description. I feel like maybe the pivot's a T10. Maybe? Is it? Yeah, pivot's a T10. And check this out. Normally I skip the hardware, the handle screws, because I'm like, they're T6. No, actually, T8. T8. Why am I checking these? They're all T8. That's fantastic. Pocket clip screws are T6, but okay, that's pocket clip. I don't really care about that. There are 3 on each side. That's fine. I don't care. It's just really not that big of a deal. The T8 heads are great. They're easy to pull out, and that's fine. Let's go ahead and get into the main part of the review. I think that's a record for getting through that stuff. So what we're looking at for materials here, and let me get the flashlight so you guys can take a look. So this, as far as I can tell, is a laminate carbon fiber, and that means that we're looking at essentially a very thin strip of carbon fiber, and then down here we are looking at G10. I'll admit I'm not a professional at identifying that stuff, but I have handled my fair share of Taiwan-made Spyderco knives that really seem to love that material. That's not really my favorite thing in the whole world. Either make it G10 or make it carbon fiber, but here's why it's not a problem. Because you don't have to go with this, right? And because this is substantially less expensive than most Taiwan-made Spydercos, so I don't really care. This is that shiny stuff. Some people like it, some people don't, whatever. There's micarta variants of it, and that's really cool. You can pick the one that you want. So the handle material is what it is. It's basically going to have the same strength as G10, which is fine. That's a material that I like. It feels good. This particular version is going to be a little bit slick because of the surface finish, but the micarta ones will probably be a little bit more grippy, right? Whatever. Here's something that's way more interesting and important. The blade steel on this is 154 cm. Oh boy, do I love 154 cm. The ingot form of CPM 154, right? In the case of most CPM steels, the CPM or the powder process actually makes the performance of the steel better. But 154 cm in its ingot form actually has a really good grain structure. It's already very fine as opposed to a lot of different ingot steels, right, that really need the powder. Well, they don't need it, but the powder process adds a massive benefit. There's not really that much difference in performance. Now, there's a little bit, right? And depending on who you talk to, it might be more or less. But the difference between 154 cm and CPM 154 is very minor. That doesn't really matter, right? Well, it does. But, I mean, the point that I'm trying to get at here is that both of those steels are incredibly well-rounded, and they make excellent day-to-day user steels. In fact, they are still to this day my very favorite steels of all time. Extremely easy to sharpen, holds a good edge. It takes a really sharp edge, absolutely. Reasonably tough, and also stainless. It is one of the most balanced steels in existence, and you won't find much argument about the benefits, right, for just general day-to-day stuff or even hard work. 154 cm is excellent, and I'm really happy that it's made it almost to budget territory. In some knives it actually has, so that's wonderful. I'm really happy about that. I love the finish on this blade. You guys know that I'm not a huge fan of satin finishes. I like tumbled finishes, and Kansept does a great tumbled finish. This looks excellent. It really does. We're going to talk more about the blade here in a sec. Let's talk about the ergonomics. I think a lot of people might point out, I mean, this was my thought. I looked at this and I was like, man, that's kind of, it makes me think of the Yojimbo from Spyderco, right? And before you jump and go, oh my God, that's a Yojimbo ripoff. No, it's a knife that is a similar size with a similar profile that has a Wharncliffe blade, right? That's the main thing here, because the handle is completely different. The fact that it has a Wharncliffe blade doesn't make it a ripoff of the Yojimbo. That would make every knife with a Wharncliffe blade a ripoff of the Yojimbo. But I might also be arguing with myself because I might be the only person who thinks that it looks like kind of like the Yojimbo. In any case, handle profile is totally different. In fact, the handle profile is one it's just straight right in here, so it gives you a lot of freedom. Now, it doesn't lock you in a way that it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm so locked in, but it is very comfortable and you can kind of move around a little bit. You're not confined to very specific spaces. You can see here, there's a little bit of this area right here that's meant to basically allow you to engage that liner lock a little easier, but it does work as a nice lock-in position whether you are right or left-handed. And then there's a little area up here you can see there's just a little bit. That's nice. It locks you in just enough, right? Like I said, the carbon fiber or this laminate stuff is going to be a little bit more slippery, but if you don't like that, go with the micarta because it's definitely going to be a little bit grippier at least. This is very, very comfortable. Extremely comfortable. You want to hold it like this. You want to go hammer grip. You want to do this. So you can do draw cuts, which of course are going to be made very easy by the fact that this is a Wharncliffe blade. It's excellent. On top of that, the pocket clip is flat and has that continuous ramp to it, which is great. So it's going to rise to meet most thicknesses of pocket seams in and out of the pocket with one hand, which is great. Nicely rounded off here. Super comfortable. There are no hot spots on this knife, and that's largely something else I really like is that there's excess chamfering here. This is great. This is really well. It's more rounded than what I generally see. Like, if we're going to compare it to, like, the Spyderco Pm2, this is totally fine. This is acceptable. But this is more of an angle than what I'm seeing here, and it just makes it that much more comfortable if you're really going to squeeze on it. Man, I like that. I'm really, really happy with that. Who designed this knife? This was designed by Dirk Pinkerton. And every time I see Dirk Pinkerton design or I hear Dirk Pinkerton design, I'm now feel more compelled to look because I've found that a lot of his designs really speak to me. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. I think Mr. Pinkerton is an excellent designer. And yeah, I mean, it's cool that he's working with Kansept. And I think this is probably the coolest model that I mean, for me, out of the ones that I've seen, this is probably the coolest model I've seen that he's designed. That's excellent. I really like that. You've got two different adjustment heads, and I went ahead and turned it to see if it was, held in place. It did start to pull out without this one free spinning, but that could just be because it's tight enough. The tolerances are good enough. It's not going to do that. So I don't know if it's actually captive or not, but it did want to come out. So that's great. These screws actually hold in the stop pin, which is always a little bit weird. But this design, as that's the situation there, a lot of stop pins are just held in place, right? They're kind of floating. So did we need the screws? No, but they're there, so it's no big deal. The thumb stud is in a perfect position. If you guys saw my Instagram story where I was like, this is excellent. Deployment on this thing is fantastic. It is so easy to manipulate. And the thumb studs are shaped in a way that is not aggressive. And it's very friendly to the finger. And there's also... it's very friendly to the finger. It's a weird thing to say. There's plenty of room to get underneath it. It's great. You can do this all day. You can just wheel it out. The detent is great. Click. Has a nice sound to it, right? When it locks into place. It sounds good. Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. I like things that are clicky and solid, right? I like the audible noise. Now, the thumb stud is definitely in the cutting path, right? But you are getting close enough, and most of the time you are going to be maybe cutting like, I don't say most of the time, in a lot of situations you're going to be cutting like this. If you're going to cut straight down, you're, I don't know, a little more than half an inch from the cutting edge. Not really that big of a deal. These blade shapes, as I've heard from a lot of people prefer these blade shapes for stuff like breaking down cardboard boxes over a blade with a belly. I've gone back and forth between Wharncliffe knives, and because I've always tried to figure that out. I've always thought, well, no, that can't be the case. The belly should get through a bit. And then I go back and forth between knives like this and knives with some belly, and I'm like, is one easier than the other? It's hard for me to put my finger on that. Maybe I'm not picking up on it, or maybe it's a preference thing. I don't know. You can tell me how you feel right down in the comment section. But either way, this blade shape is going to make a lot of day-to-day tasks pretty simple, right? Now, there are some things that you might do with a knife where you might want some slicing belly. I don't know. For the most part, generally speaking, most EDC tasks will be made pretty simple by this type of blade shape. In more professional work where you're using a knife more consistently for, things that people don't normally use a knife for but are definitely knife tasks, right? Then a Wharncliffe blade might be more preferable, or substantially more preferable, or substantially less preferable. It just depends on what you're doing with your knife. But day-to-day EDC stuff, which is generally, what I talk about on this channel, yeah, this is going to be great. You've got a flat that carries out about 85% the length of the blade, reasonable thickness. It does get pretty thin down here, so don't go jamming this into something and prying around. Behind the edge, I'd call it medium. It's not a laser beam, but it's definitely not thick. It'll slice, it'll cut, right? Sorry, let me get my fingerprints off of this thing. Edge right here, very nicely knocked down. Lots of knocking down here, and you can even see it's just further knocked down by the tumbling, even on these little corners, like 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them. Just totally, completely knocked down by the tumbling, and that's great. The edge looks fantastic, and it's even on both sides. Dirk Pinkerton's logo, and then we have Kansept's logo and 154cm, and then unfortunately still T1015A3, which I don't even know what that is. I don't think it needs to be there. This knife is made in China. For people who don't know, I see a lot of codes and weird stuff like that on knives that are made in China, but I've also seen knives that are made in China that don't have any codes at all. So I don't know if there's a rule or what, if that's just a decision from the company, but okay, it is what it is. Access to the lock is made very simple by this generous cutout right here. It's fantastic. There's even a cutout on the side of the liner, right? And that's been knocked down. So super easy. You can get your thumb right up there and it'll get caught right in the, well, I don't know if we actually want to call that a sharpening choil, but that little area underneath the blade right there, it catches your finger just fine. This is very, very smooth. You can see there, disengaging, it essentially falls, and then just with a tiny little bit of encouragement, it falls into place. This is very consistent. It's actually feeling a lot better than some other knives that I've felt. In fact, a lot of other knives that I've felt in this territory. I'm not always judging, is it fall shut or not, right? I think a lot of people think like good action is fall shut and bad action is not fall shut. No, I don't really care about fall shut or not. What I'm looking for is consistency in the pivot. Are there lumps or bumps or tight spots? No, definitely not. That's nice. That's very nice to see. We already kind of talked about the pocket clip. Here's something that's great. There's no lanyard hole, which is awesome for, you know, the 99.9% of the population who doesn't use lanyards and doesn't care about it. I'm sorry, there's some people who still use lanyards, and they're not going to like that very much. You can use that little standoff back there if you want to, but there's no lanyard hole, so we don't have to worry about the, you know, where the pocket clip's going to go. It can be prioritized as it should be. This is a nice, not fully deep carry clip, but there's not a lot of the knife sticking up out of your pocket. I like the clip. It goes well with the design. It doesn't need to be more than that. It might be a little bit too long. It doesn't need to be that long, but it's also not hurting anything. So that's fine. I really don't care. I've said this many times in reviews. I've actually come to prefer liner locks over, not every lock, but, you know, over, like, let's say they made two versions of this. Let's say they made the inexpensive one that you're seeing here, and they made a much more expensive frame lock. Some people might like that, but I'm just going to go for this version because what I've found is that a lot of liner locks, you know, basically, I mean, in a frame lock, the strength of the lock is only as strong as its weakest point, which is going to be the relief cutout. This doesn't need a relief cutout because it's already thin enough. So while it doesn't engage as much as a frame lock, or maybe about as much because a frame lock is a certain percentage of it. Anyways, it's probably just about as strong as a frame lock variant of this. I'm sure there are variables that I'm not considering or that I'm just not knowledgeable about. My God, my speech is terrible. There's probably elements I'm not knowledgeable about, but for what I'm going to use it for, I think the lock is fine. And more importantly, no matter how hard I'm squeezing it, it's not affecting the lockup. And also when I go to, you know, flick it out or just open it like a regular person, right? It doesn't really matter where I'm putting my hands. On a frame lock, you put excess pressure on that lock, it's going to be harder to open. Not going to be the case with this guy. So that's nice, simple. I love it. Centering is dead on this guy. Look how nice those standoffs look. I like that. Easy to, you know, throw a towel or a rag through there and just clean it out if you want to. How's the lockup? Fantastic. Engagement with the liner lock is fantastic. No feelings of slippage or anything like that. God dang, this is a winner. This knife makes me want to take it out and use it. Absolutely. A lot of times when I get, you know, knives from manufacturers, this was sent for me to keep. And that, by the way, it does not affect my review at all. I get a lot of knives from manufacturers that, you know, they want me to keep it, and that's fine. That's great. It's you know, fantastic. But, you know, sending me an $80 knife, which, by the way, this is what this costs, it does not, you know, affect my review process. There are lots of knives that people offer up, both viewers and manufacturers, that I go, no, I'm not really interested in looking at that, right? It doesn't matter if they're going to offer to let me keep it or not. At this point in the channel, I got so much coming in that it's just, no, I'm always going to tell you guys exactly what I think. So, what do I think about this? This is a freaking home run. I love this. Obviously, some people who are restricted by blade length or the locking mechanism are not going to be able to carry and enjoy this. Some people aren't going to like the carbon fiber, right? Some people are going to be bothered by the fact that thumb stud's a little bit in the cutting edge, but God, those are nitpicks. This is excellent. I really want to keep this one, is ultimately what I was, that's the culmination of what I was saying there. I want to keep this for myself. Usually I do giveaways and stuff on, you know, with stuff like this, because that's what makes the most sense. I don't need to have a billion knives, and I've already got a lot of knives. But I really want to keep this and use it. I've been carrying this thing around for the last few days, and I've really enjoyed it. And I've loved using it for little things here or there, right? And, you know, I can get by day to day with something as simple as a Victorinox Cadet, right? But I like carrying stuff like this, especially, gosh, in and out of the pocket, to deploying it, using it. This is great. And like I said, it's $80. Whether you go with micarta, whatever blade finish, or you go with this laminate carbon fiber, the construction here, the quality, the overall execution, and especially the fact that it's using 154 cm, I have no issue with that price whatsoever. This is extremely recommendable. Pick this knife up. If you like Wharncliffes especially. If you don't like Wharncliffes, maybe some of the other elements here will be enough to convince you and try one, right? But if you're like, I hate Wharncliffes. I'm all about hating Wharncliffes. I've dedicated my life to hating Wharncliffes. Well, holy crap, you're definitely not going to like this. But, you know, if you like Wharncliffes or you're willing to try one, I think this is an excellent, oh my God, this is really good. I like this a lot. Oh man, you can go back and check out my unboxing of this knife, my first impressions, and I said the same thing. I was like, man, I really like this. This is awesome. And I'm happy that after looking it over for a while and carrying it and using it for little things that I've essentially rounded out that conclusion, and it's the same. This is recommendable. You can find it down in the description, as well as other Kansept knives that are currently available. That's going to be pretty much it today, guys. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.